Hello there everyone, it's been a while. If you have been following the project on the Indiegogo, you may have heard that I've been having some health problems. So finally, after a longer than intended break, I'm here with another update. I was going to say we are back in the darkroom, but actually this place is not my darkroom. We had to repurpose the old room for something else, so I had to put together something here. Just some table with the enlarger and the timer on it. For those who haven't heard about what happened, I basically had asthma and have been unable to work for quite some time, which has caused even further delays in the project. I'm finally working, and there will be an update on the Indiegogo page with a link in the description about the expected shipping time of the project. And in this video I'll be showcasing the final firmware of Maya, starting with the Darkroom timer functions. There will be a couple of other videos coming up in the following days where I will go through the other features. So let me start by powering it up. So I've hooked up the power cable and I can just wake it up by pressing any of the buttons. And by the default page, it will ask me which function, which mode I want to work in. I can go use the Darkroom timer mode, film developer mode, options. Button test is just for debugging, it won't be here in the final version. This video will serve both as a quick guide before I upload the proper manuals and the cheat sheets, and I also want to demonstrate what changes I've made since the previous video. If you want the Darkroom timer to be your default page, you can just go to options, set it up, and the next time you turn it on, it will just start in the Darkroom timer mode. When you're in the Darkroom timer mode, you have the left dial to scroll through the menus, and you have the right dial to change the values. You also have a middle button to go deeper into the menus, but I have made it mostly redundant. The default menu item is the base time, because the value you will change the most often is the time. So instead of going deep into a menu, you can just use the right dial to make half-second adjustments, and if you exceed 20 seconds, it will become a 1-second adjustment dial. In the options menu, you can customize this behavior. Maybe you want to adjust in 0.1 second intervals until 15 seconds, and maybe then you want 5 seconds. You can change those variables in the options, but I will go through them in another video. On the right you see your base time, as usual, also displayed on the LCD screen, and on the left you have on the left it says LU. It actually says L0000 contrast and L for low contrast mode, because by default the last print I made was a split grade print, and one of my channels was set to a low contrast 00 filter, and my other channel was set as a high contrast grade 5 filter. Let's pretend to make a single grade print this time. This last setting, the last item on the menu is select grade. So by default you are changing your base time. Just go back once, and then you can select your grade. Maybe instead of 00 we want, you can scroll through all the standard Ilford contrast grades, or you can select color, which turns all the lights off before and during a print, including the safe light. You can choose develop, which doesn't turn any lights off, but it will count down your development time for your paper, usually a couple of minutes. Fixer bath is the same, but you can assign them to 2 different channels, and it will remind you that your develop time is maybe 1.5 minutes, and your fixing time is 4 minutes. Paper flasher will time a light source, so you can flash your paper with, or you can just go select, for instance, grade 2. As I've said, base time you can select from the main menu. If you want to make more detailed changes, you can just click any of these three buttons and you can just hold them to go back to the top menu. You can just click this one, click here, you can just click this one to enter the base menu, or you can just hold them to go to the top. That's enter. Instead of having just one dial to change your exposure time, now you can use both your dials. The right one will make 0.1 step adjustments and the left one makes 1 second adjustments. You can also just press them and now they are multiplied by 10. These are your 10 second and 1 second adjustment dials now. Instead of that, maybe you want to make f-stop adjustments, then just click the middle button and go in the f-stop mode. This one is 1 stops and this one is 0.1. Nothing has really changed until here. What we have changed is maybe you don't want to see 9.79 seconds. If you go back to the time menu, it will just run them. It will just run the number as you change, as you make a time adjustment. This also happens in the, let's make that's an odd number. Let's just go to the main menu, and if you just make an adjustment here, it will snap to a whole second or half second value, and you can get rid of that ugly number if you don't want to see it. And of course, this is an optional setting. What else have we changed? I've talked so much about how I make my test strips. I have, as usual, a couple here. And the test strip mode hasn't really changed. What's changed is when you select test strip, the settings you can read on top instead of trying to decipher what it says here. You can also, let's say this is your default page, you can just go to the test strip mode and select the base time to base your test strips on. I usually have my own way of making test strips. This one won't focus. Let me use the other camera. Oh, this one also won't focus. Right, enable autofocus. This is how my test strips usually look like. If I'd have no idea what's going on with my negative, I always make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 strips, and I want my base time to be the shortest time here. So if I make a print right now, as it says, 7 strips, 0.5 steps, which is the exposure step between each strip. Means linear, which means I'm using a single piece of paper instead of making a couple of test strips. Like, let me autofocus again. Like this. This would be the distinctive mode. This would be the distinctive mode. This is the just won't focus today. Anyway, you've seen it. This is the linear mode, and short means the shortest time will be my base time, which is 4 seconds. It will just go through all different time menus with half-step intervals. This is how I usually work, but sometimes I have an idea about how my negative already looks like. For instance, these two shots are from the same negative. They just come one after the other. They just come one after the other. In that case, I don't really need 7 steps. I don't need to scan the whole range of a paper. In that case, I just want my base time to be the one in the middle, and I want a much tighter spread, maybe 0.3 steps instead of half a step. And since this is my preset settings, I don't really want to go to the menu and change them every single time. So I added another test strip mode with completely different settings. I've also changed the direction in which I make my test strip. Normally I always put it this way. I always slowly cover my paper with each step, but maybe you do it the other way around, and you can also configure that and it will remind you how your strip works. I've also selected just to demonstrate the distinctive mode on test strip 2. and you can see on the progress bar how you will place the paper with the longest exposure time first, and it gets shorter and shorter. It's just a visual way of reminding you what's going to happen. By time you will instinctively know what's going to happen anyway, because you are the one who will set up these test strip modes, and every time you make a test strip they will just come up. Let me show you very quickly how this one works. Let's just turn this over, press the focus button, and you can see the negative under your enlarger. Press the focus button back to go back off, and you will notice it will just turn all the room lights off. Right now there's nothing on but the enlarger. And when I have focused, I'm about to make a print, all I got to do is press the expose button the first time. If the room lights are on, it will just turn the room lights off, and it will turn my safe light on. I can also use the button next to it to do this manually. This is the room light safe light toggle button. I can just toggle back and forth, but in case my room lights are on, since I'm about to make an exposure and since I have to be under safe light or in total darkness, it will just turn my lights off. After that, the next time it will just start the countdown. I'm supposed to just place a piece of paper. Now it asks me to place the second piece of paper, and you can see on these dials, let's just pretend to replace this one. You already know where it goes. On the left you can track the whole progress, and on the right you can track the current exposure time. And this is the final one, the shortest one. And when it's done, it's just going to ask me which strip I like the best. I can just turn the lights on. Let's pretend once again this is the result, even though this one is a single piece. I will say I like the second one the best, so I can just choose it. I can click OK, or I can go refine, retry, or cancel everything. And if I hit refine, that's also a completely different settings. That's all completely different set of settings. This has 5 strips, 0.2 steps this time, so they will be really close. This is to nail down the exact nuances between 0.2 steps, exposure times. In my case, maybe you want even tighter, you can go as tight as 1/10 of a stop, and just do really, and before wasting some really expensive paper, you can do one final test strips to really select the time that you'll be happy with. Let's go to the main menu. So in short, you now have 3 different test strip modes. 2 of them you can reach from the menu, you can set them up as you like. The third one you reach after making a test strip, and it's the refine menu. Something I think that a lot of people will enjoy has happened to the dodge and burn pages. Before, if you want to add a dodge or burn action to your base time, you had to go to the menu, you had to select your number of steps, you had to select which area you were going to dodge or burn. Now it's much easier. Let's say you have your base time of 3.25 seconds and you just want a very simple dodge of 0.7 steps. There. That's all you have to do now. If you're gonna, and maybe you want to add a simple burn action of 1 stops, that's it, and there. Just go dodge, don't even click anything. This one will add you 1 dodge or burn action. And let's make an exposure now. As usual, it turned my lights off. This was the main exposure. Now it's asking me to make a dodge action. Now I have to make a burn action for 1 stop, and once again this area will track the total exposure time, and the one on the right will track my current exposure time. Let's turn these back on. If you still want to add more details, you can just click here, and this is the one you've already added. Let's go dodge 2, so you can add another action, and maybe if you want to assign an area to it, you can let's call, maybe you will dodge subject A, and you don't have to just click, go to dodge 3 and add another one anymore. I've also removed this one. Let's actually just reset everything and start from the top. Let's say you want to add a 0.7 steps as dodge 1. Now you don't have to go to the left dial, just click the right one, it says EV next. It adjusts your EV steps, your dodge steps, and when you click on it, it just goes to dodge 3 and maybe add a third one. And if you want to, for instance, add an area to dodge 2 so that you can remember, maybe call it dodge area A. So the first one, it will say dodge 1, and for the second time it will tell you dodge area A. And the burn menu works exactly the same. You can just enter. Let's clear everything first. Let's say I want to make a 0.9 stop burn, then 0.4. Maybe go back, edit. I'm gonna burn my second subject B, and for the second one I want to burn the corner section. Oops, there's a bug here that I need to fix, just noticed that. So, corner and that one. So, let's go to the main menu, click room lights off. Now it will ask me to make a dodge. Now it's asking me to dodge subject A for 0.7 seconds, and that's not really realistic, because I'm gonna be here making all kinds of dodging. I don't even see where my paper is in this very dark room. So I added a slow function, which means I will just say I will modify my aperture. It gets slower by 2 stops, which slows down my dodge time. So I can just click here, and all the times have been extended. Now it's asking me to burn subject B. Maybe subject B is here. But there's another bug here that I need to fix. And now it says 11 seconds, that's too much. I will just open my aperture back up. This 2 seconds is good. Let's just do it. And with every single step it will remind me which area to dodge and burn. So if you want to play with all the menus and all the reminder displays, you can still do it. But if you don't want to bother with that, you can just straight up make a print. That one has become much easier. Let's go for the next setting, compensate. Compensate, if you don't enter any of the settings, that's the same as making f-stop adjustment. Just use your right dial and you can modify your base time in any way you want. This is the same as going to base time, then clicking the f-stop. If you don't want to do that, you can just use this dial here. If you click on this one, however, you are taken to a different menu. Here you can make different sorts of adjustments. For instance, you can compensate for aperture. Let's say you were at f8, but now you want to use f13 on your larger lens, and your time will go from 4 seconds to 11.3 seconds. But keep this in mind. At the start, we were making a split grade print. This was a low grade channel, and the other channel is a high contrast channel. So, of course, you don't have to compensate each of them separately. You can just go compensate here. Let's exit. you can just go to compensate, and maybe instead of aperture you want to compensate your length. You are going to raise your enlarger, and maybe the edge of the paper will change from 11 inches to 18 or 19. But you don't have to do this for both channels. Let me go back. On the right dial it says channel. If you just move this dial, it will just display you both channels, and then you can go to any of the compensate modes. And if you once again make a change from 9 to 16 centimeters, inches, edge of your paper, your subject size, I don't care, whatever you measure, it will just modify both your times, both your exposure times at the same time. Let's just cancel everything and go back. What else have we added? This has been a feature that's been requested from the very beginning, actually. The first time I said I'm gonna do a Darkroom timer, many people said, will it do dry down compensation? And here it is. How does it work? Maybe you printed a part of your photo on a smaller paper and you want to see how it looks like. But the problem is, it's gonna come right out of developer fixer and finally water, so it will be wet, which means it will appear darker. So many people, as rightfully, have requested a way to add this very small compensation, maybe 1/20th of a stop. What happens here is, from the main menu, again, you don't have to go anywhere. You can add one, maybe as small as 0.05 steps of dry down compensation in either way, for whatever reason you would like to, or as large as there's actually no upper limit. You can add, if you want to, 2 stops of dry down compensation. I don't know why you would like to do that, but you can. Let's decrease the time so it takes shorter. So, like now the base time is at 6 seconds, and you will notice that the dry down compensation actually does not change the base time, because that's a modifier on your base time that you should be able to eliminate at any given time. So if I make an exposure right now, it has subtracted 2 stops and made a shorter exposure, which will be brighter, but in real life it will be darker. It will appear at the correct density because it will be wet. However, if I just want to eliminate this factor very quickly, all I have to do is press and hold. It says no dry down, and your exposure time is back to your base time. So in addition to, let me turn the light back on. So you can just adjust your dry down value, and this one goes for both channels at the same time. It's a global setting, it's valid for all your channels. But if you want to, maybe you have a hair dryer and you will dry the print down, you don't want to modify your dry down setting, you can just press and hold for no dry down. You can just hold to cancel everything. What else do we have here? There's the options page, which will be the subject of one of the next videos, and you can go to select mode page and select options from there, or I just added a shortcut from here. Then there's a select mode screen and select grade we have already talked about. This is the almost final version of the firmware that I will ship the product with. There are still a few bugs here and there. I'm working on ironing them out. Anyway, this has been the Darkroom timer mode walkthrough of the 0.9.9c firmware version. As I've said before, there will be a couple of other videos coming up in the next few days where I will be going through the film developer mode. So stay tuned. I hope you liked it. If you have any ideas or questions, please let me know. I don't think there will be enough time to add them on the initial firmware, but as a free user installable firmware upgrade, I will try to evaluate every idea. I will try to implement all your best ideas. So please give me your ideas. This has been a great project with so much contribution from you. I'm logging off right now. I have to edit and upload this video very quickly. So, see you soon.